Alright, chances are you are probably familiar with the Wright Brothers' first flight off the coast of North Carolina. And if you are, you almost undoubtedly have seen this photo. It's one of the most famous photos in human history. But I bet you don't know the story behind the photograph and the man who took it, who at that point in his life had never even seen a camera. Okay, so this wouldn't be my channel if we didn't bring it back to storytelling. So in this story, you're gonna learn two valuable lessons. One about leadership, about leading your team through the internal story that you tell. And two, a very important lesson, maybe the most important lesson about content creation. So here's the story. About 120 years ago, the first man and powered aircraft that was heavier than air, now we know them as airplanes, was flown by two bicycle shop owners, Orville and Wilbur Wright from Ohio, off the coast of North Carolina. You probably have heard a little bit about that story before. And the Wright brothers have since become heroes of our modern day aviation story. But none of it would have been possible without their helpers. See, when they made that first powered flight in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, more specifically, it was on Kill Devil Hill, a big sand dune. That's what made it special about Eastern North Carolina for them to fly it. Nobody thought about how many times they had to carry different versions of the airplane up and down big Kill Devil Hill. Even on the day of the first recorded flight, there were several more attempts. And that's not even including the weeks, months, and even years of practice that they had before that. During that time, the only people that lived on the Outer Banks were fishermen, the postmaster, and the men of the United States Life-Saving Service. These lifesavers were warriors. They would go out into the sea, the storming sea, in the middle of winter sometimes, in the dark. There was no lights back then, with 10-foot plus swells and hurricane force winds, and they'd row out there in a rowboat, sometimes swimming out there to save the souls from shipwrecks that happened on what was known as, it was so bad, it was known as the graveyard of the Atlantic. Thousands of shipwrecks have happened there, and these were the men who would go out into those conditions to save the people on those ships. So these men were beasts. They were surf warriors. The only men strong and dedicated enough to keep supporting the Ohio brothers' crazy vision even when they thought they were a little loony at times. And in fact, one of them said, God didn't intend man to fly. If he did, he would have given him a set of wings on his shoulders. No siree, nobody need not try to do what God didn't intend for him to do. These men had unbreakable constitutions, and they, more than anybody from their work, understood that if one person on the team falls out of order, everything falls out of order. And they took that same approach, that life or death approach, to the first flight. And when one of the surfmen, John T. Daniels, was asked to press the rubber button, the shutter button on a box camera, he did just that. The problem was he had never even seen, much less operated a camera at that point. And when the flyer took off, he almost forgot about it. He was so blown away by what was going on, he forgot, and then he remembered his role and he went back and he pressed that button, and that photograph became one of the most popular in all of human history. Okay, so here's your first lesson. In any endeavor, there are always heroes, the number ones, and there are helpers, the number twos. The heroes are the ones that are usually the face of the company or the enterprise that get the recognition and the credit, but the helpers are the ones really making it happen, making the operation happen behind the scenes. Both of them are absolutely imperative. You need the visionaries to have these big, bold ideas that nobody thinks are possible. But those people are usually living in the clouds, the place where ideas and dreams come from. But the integrators are the boots on the ground that carry out the daily operations and tasks needed to make those big, bold ideas a reality. So here's what you need to do. First of all, you got to understand which one you are. Are you a visionary or are you an integrator? Remember, both are absolutely vital to success. And when you do, no matter which one you are, you must subscribe to the internal story that's being told. Even though the surfmen thought the Wright brothers might be a little crazy, they never questioned their duties. And if you're the hero, if you're the visionary, if you're the leader, you have to make sure that everybody from the top to the bottom, from the owner to the chef to the dishwasher, understands the narrative, the mission that we are on, the story that we are creating. Vision requires action, but action also requires vision. You have to have them both, and you have to make sure they are aligned through the same story. Now, here's the second lesson, the most important lesson in content creation. All John T. Daniels did was point and shoot. Once I had a conversation with legendary North Carolina photographer Burke Uzzle. He had just released his documentary, F11 and Be There, and that was the concept, that was the theme of the whole movie. Your equipment, your technical know-how, your artistic ability, none of that matters if you don't show up first and just capture the content. So when you're out there psyching yourself out about not being good enough, or not knowing what trends to follow when, or only having a smartphone camera, or whatever, just remember that one of the most famous photos in all of human history was taken by someone who had never even seen a camera before that day. The moment is way more important than the mechanics, so show up and press record. Hope this helps.